3 carats. Jannik Sinner, the Italian, German-speaking carrot number 1 in the world tennis player. Man, he has won 3 majors to go with his 3 carats. We update the big titles chase now after the conclusion of the 2025 Australian Open. This sounds like a Dutch voice, kind of. Big titles chase. Remember this? We always used to see Roger, Rafa, and Novak as Novak caught up with them and then surpassed them on the big titles ATP chase. Now there's only 2 guys in the big titles chase. Of course, Alcaraz and Sinner. They're pretty much tied. Alcaraz is up by 1. He's never won an ATP finals. Maybe like Rafa, he never will. Sinner's got 1 ATP finals. It's in Italy. They renewed the contract for another 5 years. They might move it from Torino to Milano. Masters titles, Alcaraz is ahead by 1. Of course, he's got 4 majors to Sinner's 3 majors. That is where the big titles chase stands. There's a few ways to look at this Sinner victoire down under. And we will analyze all of the ways in today's edition of Coffee Break Tennis. But first, let us just look at the immediate side. We're not going to get into all the not-so-fun stuff here in the intro. Let's save it for the exciting things. Let's just focus primarily on tennis. We are a tennis show. That is what we try to do here. Elite Sinner stat. Jannik Sinner is the 3rd player in history to win a Grand Slam finale without facing a single break point. Surprisingly, Djokovic is not one of those 3. Roger and Rafa, and now Sinner, only players on that list. Breaking records. How about breaking? No one in the big 3 has this. This is a new record from Jannik Sinner's excellent run. Most consecutive sets won against the top 10. So not only from this run, obviously. 22 sets in a row Jannik Sinner has won facing top 10 players. The only person who comes close to that, well, would be the big 3. The only person in the 20 territories, Federer 2 behind at 20. Nadal at 18. The Joker at 17. Pretty awesome. 37-1 out of his last 38 matches, Jannik Sinner is. Victoires. 10 matches in a row won against top 10 players by Jannik Sinner. No surprise with the sets record. 6 titles of his last 7 tournaments played. 21 wins in a row. 14 consecutive wins at the AO after winning 2 back-to-back. And a 94% win rate as the world number 1 after 50 matches played. All very, very, very impressive. But let's talk about the future, because after we see a major, especially with the big 3, we say like, okay, is this going to catch fire? How's the rest of the year going to go? Especially after the first major of the year. We love to have these kind of conversations. Well, I caught a clip, and I'll play it for you in a second. But first, let's revisit what makes Jannik Sinner so special on the movement side, just on the movement side. And this is where he is Djokovic 2.0 in my book. Take a look. Big hitting. Can hit bigger than Joker. Sliding into the backhand, getting it deep. Sliding into the forehand and getting it very deep. Ooh, an Oz from the crowd. He does it a 3rd time. Looks like he's hitting against Rublev on the other end there. I think this is in Wien. Anyways, you see my point there. And now listen, remember that. Now listen, this is a clip from the Australian Open's AO count. They were just catching how Sinner signed the camera lens. That's what they were, going for. But the commentary here is actually pretty important. Take a listen.
The game has got so fast, Fitzy, on a grass court, you can't keep your footing. And I think that it's going to be a huge advantage, as we've seen for Novak in the last sort of 5 to 8 years.
So, just in case you didn't catch that, the game is getting so fast on the grass court, you can't lose you're going to lose your footing, right? Guys are hitting so hard that you're going to have to slip and slide into some balls. And he's saying that just like with Djokovic the last 5 or so years at Wimbledon has been able to be unbeatable there because he can slide into shots and get them back deep like you just saw Sinner doing on a hard court. He was saying that Sinner is going to have a major edge at Wimbledon over his competition because he is so good at that. And throw in the fact that now his serve is right there up with the very best in the world. So that is one way to look at it, right? Exciting year coming up. What could Sinner win all 4 in 1 year? Not impossible. We don't put him as high. I like his chances at Wimbledon. I like his chances at the U.S. Open. We don't put his chances as high at the French Open, but he certainly could do it. Certainly has had good results there in the past. But first, we got to look at this because Sinner might not even play the Australian. He might not even play. We might not see him again until the U.S. Open. We might not see him at next year's Australian Open. Who knows? Because he might get banned from the sport still, going back to this doping business. So take a look at this headline. The Athletic, Jannik Sinner's Australian Open title and the uncertainty around his doping case appeal. If you say, okay, well, that's number one. Let's look at number two. Here's one from The Guardian. Off-court issues for men's Australian Open finalists leaves a sour taste for tennis. Sinner faces anti-doping appeals, while Zverev was ambushed by a heckler over his historic abuse of women issues. The Athletic, Alexander Zverev heckled in apparent reference to domestic abuse allegations. This does not sound too good for the very top of tennis. So, of course, in today's show, we'll look at the tennis, we'll look at the stats, we'll talk about the match like it's a normal Grand Slam final. But we will also dig into some of those under-the-surface stories that are starting to bubble up with controversy for the top of tennis. But before we do any of that, I was heckled in the last video. People called me an imbecile for not knowing how to read an MRI. I don't feel too bad because I said I'm no expert, but this looks like a hole the size of a quarter in his hamstring. Well, bring it up on the screen. As you can see, that's actually his bone in the middle. So think of it as a ham bone. And listen to these experts, because they didn't get it any more accurate than I did. And I did refer to the doctors, what they said about the MRI, after my very, very tiny bit of uneducated prognosticating on the MRI. I don't know how to read it. But listen to this. Johnny Mac, Chris Fowler, they don't do much better than me.
This is today posted by Djokovic. That's an MRI. It's not a ham. It's his leg.
Looks like a buffalo nickel.
John McEnroe said it was a buffalo nickel. So my analysis of Djokovic MRI, much better. Welcome to the Coffee Break Tennis Podcast. Half on camera, half podcast edition of the show. We've got Jannik Sinner's precarious situation to talk about. We've also got the draw from Rotterdam. It's funny. In the past, we'd see Sinner there, but now Sinner is the winner. And who are the losers going down to Rotterdam? We'll talk about them. But first, as we fade out the music, let's go into really what does the future for the sport hold right now. Also, I want to take a closer look at the injury of Djokovic, what Johnny Mac and Chris Fowler were talking about there. But first, let's look at Sinner. Don't really need to get into Zverev. We know about that. But with Sinner, we obviously we don't know what's going to happen in April. And it's a pretty big deal to have like a new dominant number one. I know Alcaraz could challenge the dominance of Sinner. Everyone believes that. True, it could definitely happen. But it looks like we have like a big two situation with Djokovic, making a solid case for a big three still, obviously. He deserves it just from what he's done in his past, but I think he's still got enough game to where he believes he can win another major, and he probably thinks Wimbledon will be a good place to do it this year. But we got a very big two in Alcaraz and Sinner, especially with Sinner right now, and Sinner might be gone for most of the Grand Slam calendar. So let's take a look at that article from, I think it's Charlie Eccleshire over at The Athletic, which is, they like rebranded the New York Times. It's really the New York Times. It's their sports section. It's called The Athletic. L'Athletic. That's not the universe in which this all took. Okay. We'll leave out the stuff there. He says like, oh, there's a universe where Sinner is Grand Slam. I mean, I guess it's true. I don't want to read the whole thing because it's a long article. So let's just skip into the meat of this article. On April 16th and 17th, when the Court of Arbitration for Sport convenes behind closed doors hearing in Lausanne, Switzerland, to rule on world anti-doping authorities' appeal into Sinner's doping case. That'd be WADA, W-A-D-A. Only until then, will there be any clarity at the top of men's tennis? So he'd earlier made a case saying, in one universe, Sinner is a regular Grand Slam champion, multi-champion. In another universe, he's possibly a cheat and a fraud. It didn't say cheat and a fraud, but that's where it's taking it. That hearing will begin nearly in 11 months after Sinner's opponent settled a domestic abuse case brought by his ex-partner, Brenda Pate. All right, so we've covered all that in the past. Let's move ahead. They talk about Zverev taking the microphone and getting heckled by the lady who was thrown out. We will mention that maybe. The lady who was saying, we believe the accusers against you, Sasha Zverev, they took her and they threw her out on the street. was interesting. Anyways, shortly before the U.S. Open, the International Tennis Integrity Agency announced that Jannik Sinner, the men's world number one, had twice tested positive for cholesterol. It was also announced that an independent hearing convened and had found Sinner bore no fault or negligence for those positive tests, accepting his explanation that he had been contaminated by a healing spray purchased by his physio, Umberto Ferrara, and his physiotherapist, Giacomo Naldi, used it on a cut on his hand before giving Sinner one of those nice sports massages right in the back. And of course, they don't put it in the article, but Sinner had some kind of skin condition. It was a psoriasis or something on his back, and he gets painful cuts in there, and it's easy for the hand cream to get into his cuts on his back during the hardcore sports massage. Sinner parted company with Ferrara and Giacomo Naldi. He fired those dirty, cheating, cream-rubbing Italians, is what this part of the article says. Sinner parted ways with them right away. And this is the best. And in a somber news conference, after beating Taylor Fritz in the final, it was clear that September afternoon uncertainty of the previous few months were weighing heavily on Sinner. Poor Taylor Fritz. He's just a little footnote in this article of tennis history. A couple weeks later, World Anti-Doping Agency's WADA, they lodged an appeal against the ITA's no fault or negligence verdict that could lead to a ban of up to 2 years for Jannik Sinner. From what I can tell, that's pretty unlikely. But he could definitely miss the rest of the majors this year. We continue on. WADA is challenging ITA's independent hearing, having found that Sinner did not intentionally use a banned substance. Even if it's only for a few months, Sinner will miss the French Open, Wimbledon, and could arrive at the U.S. Open seriously undercooked, says Mr. Eccleshare. It's possible that Sunday's win against Zverev was the last the world will see of Jannik Sinner at the majors this year. When he arrived in Melbourne to defend his title, it was clear that the normally placid Sinner was growing tired of the constant questions about his future and his integrity. He especially got fired up. This is me now. It says this, but I'm paraphrasing. He especially got fired up when he had a question about what Nick Kyrgios has said about him. And here's the quote. Sinner said, "I don't want to respond on what Nick said or what other players say." And then I love this part. He says, blah, 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 blah. I think the most important part for me is to have my people around me who I can trust, blah, blah, blah. But here's what I like. Speaking to reporters ahead of Sunday's final, Sinner's coach, Darren Cahill, said that the Italian finds, quote, playing tennis matches to be Jannik Sinner's, to be his safe place. It's a safe place to play in the biggest tennis matches in the world for millions of dollars. This is good. If I had to pick a safe place, that's a good one. At this year's Australian Open, he dropped just 2 sets and was only in danger. Blah, blah, okay, we can skip all that. We know what happened. They were going to say he's only a little bit of danger to Scandinavian Holger Rune, but he wasn't in that much danger. And that was more weather-related, wasn't it? Following a volley, here's some good stuff, of criticism in August from fellow players including Kyrgios, Shapovalov, Lucas Pouille, Sinner escaped the ban, and there was an indirect jibe, they're claiming, from Joker. Joker took an unusual step of declaring an allegiance by saying, "I wish Sasha all the best. He deserves his first slam. I'll be cheering for him. Hopefully he can get it here." Now, Charlie Eccleshare, maybe he's got some inside sources, but he might just be speculating here. Sounds like he's saying Djokovic took a dig saying, "I'm rooting for Sasha because he's not a cheater, right? He just slaps around some, okay, never mind. They're saying that he picked Sasha because he's not a cheater and Sinner is. They're insinuating that could be a mild dig from Djokovic, but I don't think so. I disagree. This is the day after Joker loses that he says this, or I guess it was in the press conference. So this is, like an hour after he loses, maybe even less time than that. But I think just enough time for Novak to become aware. I'm sure he could hear it. He's in the stadium. TV's got the match on, so I'm sure he could hear that Sasha was in there saying, "Don't you dare boo Novak Djokovic. This man has done more for tennis than anyone in the sport. And don't you forget, he's won this thing twice injured, and if he could have done it a third time, he damn well would have." So I think that this is more Djokovic is like, man, Sasha really went to bat for me. And maybe he could consider slight considerations for maybe the most popular move right now to side with Sinner is not the most popular move right now. Maybe some people are a little bit wondering, is Sinner a cheater? Most people, I would think, would lean towards no and would believe Sinner's side, but it sucks because this is going to be something that sticks with Sinner forever. Always will be a mildly tainted by this, I would say. As he wins more and more and years go by, I hope people can move on from it because maybe foolishly, I believe Sinner in this case, especially the way his coach, who I've always had a high opinion of, Darren Cahill, especially the way he was talking about it, Sinner, after Sinner won the U.S. Open. And just watching Sinner, like he seemed like he was going to be the guy. I don't think that he's just pumping the steroids all the time. He still looks incredibly skinny, too. Like he was hitting it before he beefed up and added a little muscle. All the muscle's really doing for him is helping him recover from injury. Or not necessarily recover from injury, but just be more durable in general, I should say. And he was already crushing the ball. He was one of the biggest hitters like as soon as he got on tour as a teenager. So it's not like he took steroids and now he hits the ball way harder. He's always moved about the same. He just kind of had it all come together finally, I think. I mean, maybe you could argue he's hitting the ball a little harder, but he hasn't grown muscle any faster than Zverev did back when Zverev was a skinny teenager and early something 20-year-old. Around this age, Zverev started to bulk up too. So I think Djokovic took the side of Zverev there because Zverev had defended him. Misgivings in the locker room may continue after Sinner's hearing, says Charlie Eckersheil in New York Times' athletic piece. In April, the misgivings may continue, whatever the verdict may be. But there will be clarity on the situation. At the moment, it's not just Sinner who must be unsure about what the next few months of pro tennis will look like. Is Alcaraz about to lose his biggest rival and the man who inspires him to play his best? Will Djokovic be handed a major boost for the 25th Grand Slam title? Or will that feel like forlorn hope if both Sinner and Alcaraz are around? Well, yeah, you would say Djokovic's best chance is Wimbledon, and you'd say Djokovic would probably rather play Sinner than Alcaraz at Wimbledon. But yeah, it looks like there is a real shot that Sinner's not there. He could get the slap on the wrist 3-month ban that keeps him out of. I would go with that. Seems like the most likely thing if they feel burned and think, we're a laughing stock. No one respects our doping agency anymore. We better slap him at least with this 3-month fine. Then we'll make it. We'll even the score a little bit. I think this could definitely help Djokovic though, avoiding Sinner and just having Alcaraz to contend with. Because there's no guarantee that Alcaraz is going to jump right back into his winning ways. We saw what happened against an injured Djokovic, which, by the way, I saw Alcaraz. Let's finish the article and I'll say that. There aren't really questions anyone wants to be asking in the aftermath of a player winning a Grand Slam, but that's the reality of this situation. There was a clear result in Sunday night's tennis match, the Australian Open final. But for Sinner and for all of men's tennis, is how he finishes the article, there are unanswered questions everywhere. Right, so we shall find out in April. It's a while, but there you go. That is that. I saw Alcaraz came out and said something positive about his loss to Djokovic. I think he, heard a little criticism of the way he kind of mocked Djokovic in the middle of the match, pretending like he's injured, saying like, what is this, some kind of fake injury? Djokovic is getting me with the old fake injury trick. It seemed like he gave into that a little bit, like he was saying, hey, he's one of the people that believe in Joker's fake injuries. Obviously, these are not fake injuries. It's a man so fit that with injuries, he can still play a very high level. That's how good he is, and that's how fit he is. And you can see he changed his style of play, too. Like, he started going for winners. He still wasn't moving perfect, but the way he elevated his game in the second set, Joker, against Alcaraz, the way he elevated, he didn't have to move like normal. So, anyways, good to see that Alcaraz don't have the quote for it. It doesn't really matter. The fact is, he knows he messed up, and he said something to try to counteract that. I want to hit the music soon, but let's look at this draw. Rotterdam, Nederlands, Carlos Alcaraz. Tough one with local Van de Zandschulp, but the boatman, he put the smack down on Italian Vavasori. Of course, Italian Jannik Sinner is not here. Holger Rune got the smackdown put on him by Spaniard Pedro Martinez, who can play well on an indoor court. Hubi Dubi was through with a retirement against Leheshka. He'll play Rublev. I like Alcaraz's chance to come through here. Of course, this is a very slow indoor hard court. I saw already a little bit of magic in that Alcaraz match. Let's look at the bottom half of the draw. Bellucci is a big story here. Don't have Sinner, but we have this guy, and he's got nice, flowing, long, luscious hair. He took out Tsitsipas today. He also took out Medvedev, obviously, with a 3-set thriller. Medvedev had to save some match points, I believe, in that second set tiebreak. Demon Hour came through pretty easy. I saw that match with Altmaier. That was not too bad. Second set was entertaining a little bit. Bellucci, can he do it after beating those two guys? Yeah, I would say he's got a shot to take out the Demon, but Demon's got finals points, and Demon's got to be liking the chance to try to win this tournament against Alcaraz instead of Sinner, who gave him an embarrassing final last year. Of course, we've got some big tournaments coming up in March, and we've got a couple interesting tournaments coming up, going down to Mexico pretty soon. And who's going to wear the big hat? Maybe we'll do a video for the big hat, but we'll come back and see what Alcaraz does here in the Nederlands. See ya!